Yo! What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new episode of Bets and Banter. My name's Liam. I pick fights on this channel each and every week. And you know that for UFC 298, we got to have a special breakdown. We got to go over this entire card. It's a fantastic pay-per-view. So without further ado, let's bring in the man of the hour, Rich, back in the building. How are you doing today, my man?
What are you saying, bro? Yeah, ready to break down some fights. Got some strong takes. It's no secret that Marab is mush of the week. So, yeah, I'm going to be dissing him like fucking tell you why Henry's good, man.
Hell yeah. So we're going to have bold takes from Rich. We're going to have takes from myself as well, as you know and love. But also, we got the sharpest chat in the game. So I appreciate each and every one of you guys that's taking the time out of your day to be a part of it. Make sure that you're dropping your thoughts, your comments, your bets as we're going here, and we'll try and reference those as well. But without further ado, guys, if you're new here, we're going to break it down like we always do, starting with this first fight of the night for Bets and Banter, and that's Andrea KGB Lee taking on Miranda Maverick. And this is a fight that's a little bit difficult to handicap in some ways, Rich. We have the one hand, Andrea Lee, a little bit of a ghost, as me and you have talked about. You know, what is she up to exactly? What is her training regimen looking like? You know, kind of moved her stuff to private, OnlyFans territory as opposed to being in that public space. I don't think it's of a sexual nature, right? She's a married woman, but I think it's probably a lot of her training content is being put behind that paywall. So when I think about this fight on paper, I say to myself, 3 losses in a row. You know, a 4th loss here probably means she's unemployed, right? So she's probably well aware of that too. You know, this is a big spot for her. I think it's a high pressure fight for her for that reason. But it's not like she's losing to bums. You know, you look at the skid that she's on, she's lost a pretty quality talent. But at some times, it's not like she's losing to, you know, young up-and-coming whippersnappers in the division, right? Viviane Araújo, talented woman, a little bit on the older end of the division. And she was able to get one over on her. So when I look at this fight on paper, I say, you know, you got a girl in Miranda who kind of needs to take a step forward, who needs to move up in the division. And she called for this fight as best I understand. She asked for this fight. I think that she said, like, hey, we kind of communicated with each other, like, hey, do you want this fight? Can we get this going? And then they brought it to the matchmakers, you know. She said they should get like a finder's fee for the fight because they decided to do it themselves, basically. But I think that for Miranda, you know, she probably is looking at some of the grappling sequences that she's seen in these recent fights and saying to herself, you know, I do have the strength and the physicality and the technical know-how to leverage some of these positions to get the win. I think at times I've been frustrated by the lack of fundamental wrestling from Miranda Maverick in her UFC fights. You know, the way she was getting stuffed on her shots against Jasmine, I thought left a little bit to be desired there, Rich. But when she came out to that fight, it's in Canada. It was kind of on inopportune circumstances against another big, strong woman. Andrea fits some of those same categories, but she's not as young and hungry, I don't think, as Jasmine. So I feel like I got to go with Miranda, but with low confidence here. I don't think I'd be confident laying the chalk with Miranda. We've seen her drop the ball a number of times. But I do think that it's interesting that, you know, her sub prop in some places is over 5-1. You know, I think a lot of people expect this fight to go the distance, but I would lean towards playing the fight not to go instead of the under 2.5, because I feel like both these women will be live to finish in round 3 if they're having the fight they want. What I mean by that is if Andrea's kept her on the feet the whole night, she can do a lot of damage. She can dance around a little bit, land some strikes. And frankly, I haven't liked Miranda's reactions at times to getting hit cleanly on the feet. You know, bloodies up a little bit as well. But on the converse side, if she's stuck underneath in round 3 and she's trying to do the wrap between the leg, defense to the head and arm choke, I don't think that shit's going to work against Miranda, truth be told. So fun fight, good scrap. How do you feel about this one, Rich?
Yeah, this is why people should be tuning into the show, man, because from what I'm seeing on Twitter, everyone's telling me the lock is over 2.5 in this fight. Parlay it with something, and they couldn't be more wrong, man. It seems to me that people are still capping Andrea Lee like, she's still fucking 28 or something. She's not. She's 35, man. And if you do your research and look, she's barely training for this fight, man. She's done nothing. You mentioned it already. Maverick was the one who organized this. She texts Lee, they text Mick, and we got a fight on Saturday, man. So, yeah, that tells me Maverick's highly confident that she's seen something in training. They've trained together numerous times. So I think she knows she's got a number, and that's why she's calling for this fight. Lee has the better hands. If it was a boxing match, I'd be betting on Lee probably, even at this age with, the intangibles, not training, being old as fuck and just not having the fire anymore. I'm probably going to retire once this fight's over, in my opinion. But it's not, man. It's MMA. Maverick's going to take her down. She's going to get discouraged, Lee, probably round 2, 3, and she's going to get finished, man. So I don't like the overs. I don't like fight goes the distance or any of that shit. I think Maverick, I'm not saying a lock, but I think she fucks her up, and ITD's plus 400. So it's an easy call for me, man. It's an easy bet, and it's one of probably the largest bets I've made on the card.
There you go. And yeah, man, I see this one the same way. I've been looking at the fight not to go the distance. I've been looking at some violence props on Miranda. I do think that it would probably come later on in the fight. I think Andrea, she starts fights pretty tough, but to your point, Rich, she just breaks down a little bit mentally, I think, over the course of the fight. Her corner's always having to yell at her and stuff in between rounds, trying to keep her motivated. And I just think that that's going to be a tough sell because when you're stuck in the bottom position, if that's going to be how the fight plays out, there's nothing that Tony Kelly's going to tell you that's going to get you off your back. I hate to tell you. So I think yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, I was just going to mention some things as you're saying that. I think people are putting a lot of stock into the Barber fight because Lee was able to get her down, but who doesn't take Barber down, man? She gets ragdolled by everybody in her fights. Sometimes, she can negate that in round 2 and then take over the fight like she did in her last bout, but she gets taken down a lot in her fights, so I don't put much stock into that. I think every fight's different. Styles make fights, and this time, Lee's going to be the nail, not the hammer, and she's not going to like it. And when it gets to round 2, mid-round 2, and she's got Maverick on top of it, she's going to give it up, man. I think she's giving up the sub. She doesn't want to be in there. Go look at Maverick's Instagram. She's been in jiu-jitsu tournaments recently. Recently got promoted to a black belt after 9 years. It's all pointing to a finish, man.
I love it. I like that we're seeing it the same way as well. So next up, my man, we've got Val Woodburn taking on Oban, the Welsh gangster Elliott. Why don't you start us off on this one, Rich?
Yeah, again, easy pick for me, man. Woodburn, he's the side. Can't be betting this Oban guy. I don't think he's up to much, to be honest. 9-2 in his career. The 2 losses came by TKO. One was against Figlak, who isn't good. He's making his UFC debut soon. But if you go and watch that fight, it's on YouTube. It's just concerning, man. Figlak took him down, controlled him. And I think Woodburn's going to do the same. Dropping to welterweight. He's at a steroid gym in Fusion XL. They're notorious for that. The likes of Jacare, Machida, Mike Perry, they're all on it. Nicholson, if people know him, used to be in the UFC. So, yeah, the drop to welterweight, too physical. He's going to get that clinch. He's going to take him down. And I literally think it could be round 1 and done, man. Some other important things. It's his debut. Elliott is from Wales, which is up the road from me. He's training at a fitness center. No one tough has ever come out of Wales apart from Calzaghe. Yeah, I don't think he's confident at all either. I think in his debut, man, he's the type to get the jitters, this guy. And what was the other thing I seen from him? He only flew from Wales to Cali, which is a 16-hour flight, literally like yesterday. So I don't like the jet lag. It's like he thinks it doesn't exist, like the acclimation. I think that is a thing. So, his cardio could be compromised. So Woodburn's the side, man. Stupid number. I don't know what the bookies think they've got in Elliott, but they've got him wrong, man. He's not a gangster. He's not a real one. He's a fugazi. And yeah, I like the number, man.
Well, there you have it. So Rich is coming in on the underdog here. And I think that I picked Kite Brito to get the win over Oban Elliott on the Contender Series. So I don't remember being altogether sold on his game. But when you look at this fight, I say to myself, man, Val Woodburn, I listened to an interview with him. He talked about, hey, I took some time away to figure out what is my weight class going to be. What's the right spot for me to compete at? And I think that that's important, and competing at 170, he's going to be a big, strong guy. At 185 on short notice against Bo Nickel, it's a tough assignment, right? It's like most guys don't want to take that fight, but he took the fight because that's your ticket to the UFC, right? We've seen this before with Jalen Turner. First fight at 170 against Vicente Luque, gets murdered in the first round and then goes on and has a successful lightweight career. It's just a ticket into the door, right? And when I'm looking at Val, I do think he's got certainly athletic potential. He's got an ability to potentially take this to the ground. Haven't seen a lot of submission equity out of him, but listed affiliation on Tapology, Fusion XL Performance Center, which means that he's been training with a lot of guys that can grapple. So I think that this should be an interesting spot. Do I have great confidence in Val? No. But I feel like this fight is probably, a competitive fight. And when you have somebody at a, 75% indication that is coming into their UFC debut and didn't look that great before the Contender Series, doesn't really scream massive favorite potential to me. So it's a dogger pass situation for me, but that's a fight I want to do a little bit more tape study before I part ways with my cash. Also, not a Jack Shore fan. Are you, Rich?
Jack Shore, didn't he get finished by Ricky Simon?
He did indeed. He did indeed. I think he was injured for that one, but
yeah, okay.
Aren't they all? Next up, my man, we got another welterweight scrap. This time we've got Josh Quinlan taking on Danny Left Hand to God Barlow. And this is a fight where, I picked Danny Barlow to win on the Contender Series. And I thought that he was going to get it done via submission in that spot. But I knew that the Left Hand to God was always live as well. I just like the way that he operates when he was moving on the ground for a guy that wasn't his background. And I thought that he had such a huge size advantage against his last opponent. He could leverage that there. But now he's taking on Josh Quinlan, a much more experienced guy on the ground than he is, right? He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, comes from an American wrestling background as well to an extent. So I think that we could see Quinlan try and take this fight to the ground. I think he'd be a little bit foolish not to. I do think he can compete on the feet. Barlow does overextend at times, looking for his power shots. But I just think that his power is a little bit more substantial. I think his durability is a little bit better as well. So those are a couple of the things that, for me, I can understand why Barlow's favored, but it does seem like everybody is like certain he's going to win this fight. And we have seen examples of him taken down regionally. It wasn't all that long ago. And so I think that, again, like Quinlan, last time out, he loses a fight against a similar archetype of opponent, trying to follow him around on the feet and getting beat up all night. Maybe he tries to come out with a different game plan here. I did listen to an interview. He sounded like a pretty self-reflective guy. He said, like, all I do is train and go to coffee shops and like think about like my goals and like things that I'm working on. I was like, that sounds like a martial artist to me, man. But in any case, I just don't know that he has the physical attributes to win this fight at a high enough clip. So it's a spot where I do know some sharps that came in on the Quinlan side. I think that's why this number is slightly ticking down across the board a little bit. But I would be worried here. I more prefer violence props because I think if Barlow loses this fight, it would probably be from making a grave mistake, getting caught in a bad position. But I think the longer it goes on, eventually he'll find that kill shot if Quinlan stays on the feet with him. So how do you feel about this one, Rich? Fun fight in the welterweight division.
Yeah, not a big take, man. To be honest, I just think it goes like Giles and fucking, what's his name, Prater's last week. I think Quinlan might have success round one, get his takedown, but I think Barlow knows he's suspect on the ground. It's there from the regional tape, but I think he can stay safe, man. I don't think he's going to do anything stupid like give his back. And then in round two, I think he comes out and puts it on him, man. So yeah, I think it's a good live betting opportunity. I wouldn't take Barlow. I've kind of got a rule this year not to take debutantes at stupid numbers like this. So yeah, I'll be looking to live bet it, man. It could be sweaty in round one, but I think Barlow gets it done come round 2 and 3, man.
Nice. So almost like a Carlos Prate situation, download a little data in round one, make everybody sweat that big bet, and then he comes through in round 2 and delivers the boomstick. So speaking of boomsticks, we've got a 205-pound matchup up next where I would be pretty surprised if somebody does not get finished in this one because we've got Mingyang Zhang taking on Brendson Ribeiro. And I called the upset. Brendson Ribeiro, let people know on the Contender Series, right? He's a dangerous guy. And I just thought, like, at light heavyweight, how wrong could you be when the guy is like a murderous fighter, right? He goes out there with bad intentions every time. And even against the best or the worst guys that he fights, I feel like he's just as likely to get knocked out because he fights with reckless abandon. He kind of keeps his chin a little bit up in the air. He fights with a lot of aggression, and aggression can be punished. And I think when I'm looking at Zhang, it's not like that last fight was a perfect display. He did have some wear and tear on his face, but he landed a lot of damaging shots as well. And got the knockout in the first round. But anybody with a loss to Askar Mozarov on their record is gonna have some skeptical hippo eyes for me. How do you feel about this one, Rich?
Yeah, there's 2 fights on this card where you're fading shit with shit. This is one of them, and Taffer and Lima's the other one. So I don't want any part of it. Either could get chin checked easily. I guess I like the Zhang side just because, the UFC booked this for China and it got cancelled. So that would imply to me they kind of like was setting him up. But I'm not even confident in that, to be honest, because he's so green. He's record shit, typical China, fighting 0-0, 0-1 guys regionally. Maybe both of these guys on steroids. Ribeiro definitely looked like it on Dana White Contender Series. So yeah, I'm staying away, man, and I'd advise everyone to do the same. But I guess gun to my head, I'd pick the Chinaman to get the KO. I think it was plus 140, plus 150. Even that's not great, man. So yeah, complete pass from me.
I'm trying to look. He's on a pretty significant win streak, it looks like. Yeah, 9 straight wins for Zhang. And I do think that at 25 years of age, a lot of those fights he took and lost were like pretty early on in his career as a young man. And it's light heavyweight, right? So like if you're out there having striking fights at light heavyweight, and especially if you're in a developmental stage of your career, I don't think that this is a guy with a deep amateur circuit or like he had 50 kickboxing matches somewhere else. It seems to me like a guy who just all of his experience is kind of out in front of us. And so that also could make him look a little worse than maybe he is, because I do think the Askar Mozarov loss looks bad. But he also got like kicked in the face by some dude who just looked like he had way more kickboxing experience than him. So I feel like now he's gotten a little bit more confident. And if he's on juice, like it looked like he was on to me on the road to UFC, whatever they called that, like an exhibition bout, then I think that he could definitely compete in this one. So it's kind of, for me, a fight where I would almost wait and see if this line flips. I feel like it's very live to do so. I think a lot of the action's coming in on Ribeiro. But last time out, Ribeiro, everybody thought he stunk. Everybody thought he had the worst chin of all time. He was going to get finished. So now I'm like, do I want to crowd in on the boat where everybody's like, yeah, Ribeiro's cool now? Or I'm like, no, I probably would just wait for the line to flip and be on the other side or pass. So it should be a good and interesting fight, though, and hopefully they get it done with in 5 minutes or less. But with that being said, my man, let's move on to the next fight here. We've got a fantastic matchup at 135 pounds, and by fantastic, I mean hopefully it can make us some money because it's not the greatest fight, right? It's the biggest favorite on the card by a significant margin, but Rinya Nakamura is a high-level prospect coming out of Japan. I think that some people don't understand what the global participatory rate of a sport like wrestling is. It can be quite high, especially in some places around the world where it's a good opportunity. And for him to make that transition as a young man, so not with all the wear and tear of a lifelong career in wrestling, but a lot of the skills, a lot of the know-how, and a lot of the physical development. The reason a lot of wrestlers come in and have success in mixed martial arts is that they're built like brick shithouses. They have a lot of physical strength. They've got flexibility. They've got dynamism to their body. They've got body control. And so you can coach somebody like that to be very successful in martial arts. And I think that Rinya Nakamura is an example of that. He's going out there and getting all these wins by knockout. Is he some striking savant? Is he very technical? No, that's not his game. He's just very powerful, and he could take people down. He could beat them up, but he could also connect from space, be quick across, moving across space and create power as a result. So I think that Rinya is a dangerous fighter. I think he's going to win this matchup. And I think that you probably agree. So I'll kick it over to Rich.
Yeah, for me, there's only one way you can really play this fight because of the short notice for Vera, 36. He's not that good anyway. He's obviously just taking this to get his foot in the door, and fair play to him. But yeah, Nakamura, the KO was what, minus 125. The sub opened on Bet Online at plus 250. So yeah, the only value I see really is the submission. You've seen he's got a submission on his record. You've seen in the Fernie Garcia fight, he goes for submissions multiple times, but Fernie was just a stubborn bastard. I don't think Vera's going to be that stubborn, man. I think he's thankful to just be in this position. He knows he's not expected to win. He knows he's outclassed in terms of like physicality, just everything, man. This guy's, from what I saw, was some capoeira guy, which I think is just complete bullshit, and taekwondo, which I don't rate either. So yeah, Nakamura, if he wants, take this guy down, just avoid the guillotine on the way down, and yeah, have your way with him, man. Should be a rear naked choke or some shit in round one. So I really like the submission. Other books were opening it around 350. I thought that was a ridiculous price, to be honest. I've seen this many times, man. I remember Bo Nickel in Dana White Contender Series. They were doing the same for him. His KO line was like minus 250. Then they give you the submission at 300. Obviously, everyone's wise to that now, but yeah, you got to get in early, man, if you want to hit these kind of things, because if he finishes by subbing this fight, you ain't getting it at this number again. So I'd recommend the submission for Nakamura. I think it's a nice line, man, and I don't think Vera's got a chance, to be honest. Just happy to be here, take the L.
Yeah, and I do think that, to your point, his best chance is probably to try and catch him with something. He does train out of the 50-50 gym. It's a good jiu-jitsu gym, but I just haven't seen it enough from him in his fights to think that he's going to offer something to Rinya here. I think the strength is too much. And there's often times where you have a pretty solid jiu-jitsu guy who just gets out-physicaled, out-hustled, moved by a wrestler. And I just think the athletic caliber here is definitely in favor of Rinya pretty significantly.
Yeah, just to address what Jewish said in the chat, there's no value on Vera, man. I know the line might be off minus 11,000, but there's no value in playing Vera just because of the circumstances, man. Of course, anyone can catch somebody with a punch or a Hail Mary fucking guillotine when they're dry, when it's early, but 9 times out of 10, the side's Nakamura. And in my opinion, you pick your poison in it, the KO or the sub. But yeah, if you want to put money on the 36-year-old, it's on you, man.
I mean, for me, like if there was a money line side to this fight, sure, it's the underdog, but I don't think that that's the optimal bet on the fight. And I even think that there are smarter ways that you could play it if you like the dog side here in Vera. But I'll save a little bit of that for myself because I haven't bet that. But in any case, we've got Rogerio de Lima up next, taking on Justin Badman Tafa. And Rich, we'll have you kick this off from a breakdown standpoint, but I'll just give you the color that I feel like people are forgetting. Rogerio de Lima, listen, I felt like an asshole. I bet it last time, right? Got what, $1, maybe $1.25 closing line value, and then he gets killed in the first 20 seconds of the fight. Unfortunate result. But it was the kind of thing where I felt like I had all my ducks in a row, right? I wrote out a pretty long, detailed explanation for why I thought if it was a longer fight, he was going to win. And it wasn't a longer fight, right? It was the shortest fight of his career. So when you look at that sample size, he, after the fight, does a bunch of interviews and says, all my teeth are loose. I can't eat. Like all my teeth are messed up. Like I can't, my whole mouth is messed up. Do I want to bet on that guy in his next fight? I'll tell you personally, no, I don't, especially at his age. So for me, that's my preface at chalk. I'm going to kick it over to you. How do you feel about this fight, Rich?
Yeah, I agree, man. If I didn't already have Marab Mush, it would probably be De Lima, to be honest. I think it's crazy. Like you said, he got knocked out brutally. His teeth are all fucked. He's 38. Is he that good anyway? I don't think so. He's notoriously been round one or bust in his career. Obviously, he's gone to decision lately in his last couple of fights. But yeah, I think this could be similar to what I was saying in the Barlow fight, where Tafa maybe faces some adversity in round one. But I like Tafa late props, man. I like him in round 2 or 3 if I was going to bet this fight. But to be honest, I'm probably going to stay away because it's so volatile. It's heavyweight personally. But if you want my take on it, if I had to make a bet, it would be Tafa to KO in round 2 or 3. I think that's a good look, man. And you'll get better numbers on that.
There you go. I think that when I've bet Tafa in the past, I've bet him with like correlated unders, just like under Tafa in the under 2.5, which most books don't offer that, but there was a handful of books that do. And that was the kind of way that I targeted his fights. Cause I was like, listen, if this guy goes to decision, he's a bonehead. I don't trust him to do anything right to like win me the fight late or like to do the right thing. And even in a striking based fight, like his ideal setup against terrible fat heavyweights like Carlos Boy Felipe, he goes to a 50-50 split decision. It's like, okay, can't trust the end of decision, but he does have the big power. He does have that ability to close the show. And I do think that Lima, the one thing I would note about him is outside of that Derek Lewis fight, he's not normally a guy who you're like, oh my God, this guy's chin is just like the worst of all time or something. That's not really his flaw. But now I'm a little bit more concerned because he just got his teeth dentally rearranged for a low fee. And then when I'm looking at like, okay, Was he a quitter before then? Yeah, definitely 100%. Like if he got into the grappling phases in bad positions before, he would just say, no, I'm out of here. So I'm like, I've seen that instinct from him before. And he just got brutally knocked out in his last fight with his teeth rearranged. And now he's got to fight this big, like, barrel of a person that also is going to try and just like time uppercuts and like big shots. Like I just feel like he's going to throw overhands and uppercuts the whole night and try and kill him with one of them. And I do think he'll be live the whole fight as a result. But I also think the one difference that I had with a lot of other people in this fight is a lot of people that are sharp that like the Lima, they're like, dude, he's going to ride out the easiest decision of all time here. And that's possible. But I think if he takes him down, Tafa is a zero on the ground. Like I know nothing about this guy's ground game except that he doesn't want to be there, right? And I assume it would look something worse than Tuivasa. Like I think that whatever Tai Tuivasa has gotten to as like a level of grappling, I feel like he'd be one stage below that. So like that's not going to be good, right? He's going to look terrible if the fight gets down there. And I do think Marcos could potentially just go step 1, step 2, step 3, and it's over. He's a black belt, and he does have some idea of how to operate on top. It's just he doesn't like to face adversity. If he's on top and this dude rolls over on top of him, he's going to be like, oh, fight's over. Thanks anyways. So that is why I can't bet him at chalk. But I wish everybody the best. I think it's a interesting matchup that could go either way, but it's not the kind of fight that I feel bullish to invest on. I was a lot more confident when it was Parker Porter, who I just felt like was too slow and a little bit too reactive on the feet. I felt like that was going to be Tafa's best opportunity to cash in. So now this is a little bit more complicated, but Rogerio did the JOB last time, so maybe they're trying to get him a win with Tafa, but it's just hard to get somebody an easy, clean win in the heavyweight division because you get hit one time on the chin, it could change everything. Next up, we've got Amanda Lemos rounding out the preliminary portion of the card. She's taking on Mackenzie Dern, and this is a fun fight where, both these women coming off a pretty brutal beatdowns in their last spot. How do you feel about this one, Rich?
I think the fight itself is pretty binary. I think we can all agree on that, to be honest. I've heard some people say Lemos could get the sub here. Maybe not. I won't be betting that. I like Dern, to be honest. There are concerning things, the training, lack of camp, having a proper, gym manager, whatever, coach. But she has had time to prepare for this and to be in fitness shape. And to be honest, I think I'm one of the people, I've heard someone say also this week, if Dern gets it to the mat, it's not going to be an insta sub. I disagree with that, man. I think there's levels to jiu-jitsu, and if Dern can get her down one time and get on top, the fight could be over shortly. So based on that, I'm picking Dern. Notoriously, her wrestling ability to get girls down hasn't been the best, but I just think at some point she will get a takedown, and I believe she will get a sub. So yeah, nothing too technical on the breakdown. It's literally just that, man. But obviously, if she doesn't, she's fucked on the feet. I just can't see her losing 2 KOs in a row. I'm not buying it, man. She's a good girl to have around. I think this is kind of a favorable matchup. We've seen Lemos against the likes of Wiley. She was taking her down repeatedly. And to poke some holes in her, strength of schedule, Lemos, the Rodriguez KO, obviously that was nice. She was an underdog there. I can't take that away from her. But Waterson, it was retirement Waterson. Hill, it was a split decision, and I thought Hill won that. But Hill don't win splits. Then before that, it was Ruiz, the Mexican, the head and arm girl. Souza, who got caught, the small Brazilian, and Inoue, who's a little dumpling. She's got no athleticism at all to her. So, yeah, maybe I'm, I got the blinkers on, but I can poke holes in her schedule, Lemos, and I just think she's going to get subbed by Dern, man. She's going to get that takedown.
Yeah, Amanda Lemos, I've enjoyed betting on her as an underdog at points in her career. I even considered getting to the bet against Wei Li, but ultimately I just thought her ground game was too suspect, right? And so I ended up betting the fight ends by sub, I think, in that fight, as well as Wei Li by sub. And unfortunate result, obviously, but was it the world's dumbest bet? I still don't think that it was. Wei Li just put on an absolute ground domination. Never got the finish, never got the submission. But, she was all over on the ground for most of the fight, ton of control time. So it's the kind of bet that, sometimes you make it and it doesn't cash. And I do think that Mackenzie Dern is somebody I've been good at handicapping. On the prop side of things, not as good, but from a money line standpoint, I've found that more often than not, I've been able to get to the right side of Mackenzie Dern fights, except that last one, right? I thought Mackenzie was going to win. I finally thought like, all right, Mackenzie ready to take a step up. I thought the Angela Hill fight was the best look she's ever had. I thought that we'd never see the 25-1 Mackenzie Dern knockout prop again, which we probably won't. But I look at this fight and I say to myself, man, both these women have such a clear path to a violent finish, right? Like on the one hand, Mackenzie Dern was dropped 4 times in her last fight. She has been dropped now, I think 5 times in her UFC career. So it's not the first time she was dropped either. But it was a lot of times getting knocked down in a row. And it was like Keith Peterson had a hit out on her or something. Like this guy is just like, get back up, and just watching her get dropped all over the place, rolling around on the ground. He's like, get back up again, bang. And when I'm looking at that, I say, man, that could be the only downside, I think, for Dern here. The thing that the one point I really felt the need to address, though, is a lot of people have been saying, she needs to get this fight to the ground. She needs to get this fight to the ground, as though they did not watch the fight where Jessica Andrade got the fight to the ground exactly 0 times and won via submission. Is that a fact or is that not a fact? Like, how many times are we going to ignore that fact? The fight didn't go to the ground. She submitted her standing. She literally didn't go to the ground. So when I say that, I say, what was her reaction? What was Lemos's defense? It was bad. She didn't know very much what to do. And Zhang Weili is a very good grappler. She's come a long way. She's submitted Carlos Barca. She's done a lot of great things. But if she has developed in her grappling as Mackenzie Dern, y'all have to be smoking crack. Y'all have to be smoking crack rock. She's not going to the jiu-jitsu worlds and winning, right? But Mackenzie has done it many, many times. You understand? So I do think sometimes people lose sight of jiu-jitsu credentials. Adolfo Vieira. Yeah, he's not like Gregory Rodriguez and these other. No, he's one of the best of all time. So when he gets you in those positions, it's over. And I even have to remind myself that when I think about Mackenzie, I think that the thing that has defined her career struggles has been a obsession with looking too pretty on her submissions, man. She's like going for the power Kimura. She's going for the flying armbar, the omoplata. Fuck that. Mackenzie, take the girls back and submit them. Like, please, God, for the love of all things holy. Or just, like, grab a hold of her in any way and go for this head and arm choke, because her reaction was going, like she had seen a ghost. So I'm saying that 2 years ago or whatever it was against Andrade was her reaction to getting head and arm choke. It's a terrible look for me going against Mackenzie Dern, who's one of the best. So I do think Mackenzie has shown that she can be opportunistic. She can find weird ways to push the fight into the grappling. And I think that it could be one and done in this fight. I think she could finish. But I also believe that if she tries and fails, that Amanda Lemos could take her out of the fight. She has real power. And I think that the one other thing I'll mention is that Mackenzie has power too. Like, both of these girls actually have some power in their hands, which is rare for women's MMA. But Mackenzie Dern has recorded multiple knockdowns in the UFC. And she also beat Angela Hill to a bloody pulp in that fight. Like, that was a merciless beatdown. So I think that this is a fun fight, and I think both women have a chance. But I think people are selling Mackenzie a little bit short here. I don't like her training situation. I can't be like, it's all in on Mackenzie, like she's easily going to win this. But I just think that the upside is there where she could change the complexion of this fight with one position, one situation. And against a lot of her other opponents, they've been really savvy at defending. They've been really defensively apprehensive. Amanda Lemos tends to take a lot of risks. And I do think that could open her up to getting finished as well in this fight. So with that being said, oh no, please go ahead.
So yeah, just because people were saying in the chat about why Lee couldn't finish it. Why Lee was like position over submission in that fight. She was very cautious. Dern isn't like that, man. Dern will go for the subs if they're there. She's like, fuck the position, man. She just wants to get the finish. So I think that's a big difference there, man. And also Lemos was playing it safe on the ground also. So yeah, that's my take on the Wiley bit, man. But yeah, I like Dern here.
Nice. All right, on to the next one, guys. We've got the main card starting off with Anthony Fluffy Hernandez and Roman Kopylov. this is one of the best fights on the card as well in the middleweight division. We're going to find out who's coming and who's going a little bit among these prospects. And, it's funny to say prospect about a 32, 33-year-old guy in Kopylov, but, he's had to work his way up in the UFC. He came in, didn't have that much experience, and kind of got exposed. Like, oh, I don't have any wrestling. I don't have any grappling to compete at this level. And I think that we've seen now he's made some adjustments, right? We've seen he's training with the Dagestani wrestling squad. He's training with some guys trying to get better where he's deficient. But if you're getting submitted by Carl Roberson, it's a huge red flag, right? It's a big problem. And the UFC has match made him accordingly. They've kind of given him these spots along the way where he could rebuild himself. And I thought Puna was going to test him. And Puna went out there content to strike with him on the feet until it was too late. Got hit with all those body shots. He was exhausted. Then he tried to wrestle, and it was sloppy. It was bad. And also, Puna just doesn't have much depth to his grappling game from what we've seen, right? He just hasn't been able to take guys down, exploit them on the mat in the UFC. So I think that was a wake-up call for Puna more than it was like, oh, my God, the coming out party of Kopylov. When I went back and watched the Ribeiro fight, I actually remembered it differently. I remembered it as Kopylov beat him from pillar to post until he knocked him out. But there was a point in that fight where Ribeiro hits him with a right hand and Kopylov goes wide-eyed and backs himself onto the fence. And then Ribeiro shoots a shot. Like, the guy has no wrestling ability at all. It got stuffed in embarrassing fashion while Kopylov was hurt. But it was like, this guy lands his first significant punch in the fight and just shoots a takedown. The guy was a bonehead. I think that he was also exhausted. And it was 4 minutes into the fight. So disaster zone. Now I'm looking at this and I just say, like, this is going to be a lot harder of a fight for Kopylov unless he's able to hurt Fluffy to the body. Because Fluffy can be hurt to the body. He got finished by Kevin Holland. I don't think people saw that coming. But Kevin went out there, didn't respect him, wasn't afraid, threw some knees to the body, threw some elbows. Fluffy will compete in those clinch situations at times. Like, he'll throw back. And I do think he is hittable. I would put that on anything. I think that on the feet, the guy gets hit with right hands. The guy gets hit with some shots to the body, but he's tough, right? He's a tough motherfucker. So I think that when I'm looking at Fluffy's game, he's a guy that wants to continue to just make you less and less comfortable over the course of the fight. And we have seen Kopylov get uncomfortable in fights with Albert Duraev, right? Who has been exposed in the UFC as a guy that doesn't have the cardio to go, who's a little too arrogant about his own skill set and where he was at relative to how it actually played out in the octagon. And I think that now we're seeing, maybe some of those chickens come home to roost. If I'm looking at this fight on paper, I'm saying to myself, Fluffy Hernandez can push an insane, relentless pace. He's going pace for pace with some of these other guys who are high level, cardio guys in the division, guys that want to push that pace, guys that want to get in your face. He just completely outworked and melted MAB, for example, who's a guy that wants to push that cardio on people. So I think that there's a lot to like about Fluffy, but I also think that my most confident take on this fight after research, before research, is I would be very surprised if this fight goes to distance. I think that a lot of people, could see, Fluffy, because he's gone to decision with like 2 of his last 4 opponents, maybe he grinds it. I just think that if Kopylov's stuck in these bad positions, he is going to get finished eventually because Fluffy is relentless. He throws a lot of ground and pound. He will continue to go for those submission attempts until you quit. And on the opposite side of things, Kopylov is dangerous in round 1, in round 2, in round 3. He does start to get tired. There's no doubt about that. But he can poke, prod, kick you to the body, and he snaps off his shots. And I do think that any one of those shots could hurt and finish Fluffy. So for me, most confident that this fight's not going the distance, but I think Fluffy probably gets the job done in round 2 or in round 3. And I think the sneaky take could be that he gets it done via TKO because we did see Kopylov is not, a quitter, I don't believe, in the traditional sense. He did get finished by Roberson, but I think that was a literal grappling mistake. I think he will continue trying to push away at the hips, cover up, but I think he could just get overwhelmed with ground and pound as he gets more fatigued if he's stuck in bad positions. How do you feel about this one, Rich?
Yeah, it's pretty simple to me. As you said, Fluffy's going to get his finish by wearing him down. It's like, no surprise to people in round 2 or 3. Or Kopylov's going to catch him on the way, man. I think that either by KO was plus 140. I think that's a good look. And yeah, I'm with you, man. I like the KO actually rather than the submission for Fluffy. And that's simply because I can't remember it, man, and I didn't add it to my notes. Kopylov fought somebody. Durev, that was it. So Durev didn't go for takedowns till round 2. And then when he did, man, literally Kopylov was flat on his back. He could have had the TKO, you know, if he threw if he threw more strikes, he could have had him out of there. And I just see Hernandez doing the same, man. You know, getting on top, getting mount, throwing some strikes. I'd like to see Mark Smith reffing this fight. That would be nice. But the numbers are quite generous for Hernandez. I think it's around about plus 500. So I like Hernandez KO. KO 2-3 props. They're nice and juicy too. So that's the way I'm going, man. But if you want to be ultra cautious, you could take either by KO and just hope that Fluffy doesn't sub in, because with the short notice, the flight from fucking Russia or, you know, Uzbekistan, wherever the hell he's from, that's not going to play in his favor either. He's going to gas out. So yeah, fight doesn't go the distance and Fluffy to win, man.
Yeah, and I do just think Fluffy is a son of a gun looking for the subs, man. Like, he definitely likes to look for the sub, and I think he's willing to take a TKO, right? If that's what the guy gives him. But so often this guy's he grips his hands around the neck and arm more than probably anybody in the middleweight division. So that's the thing that I really like about his game. I try and steal all his shit, and I hope that he wins, because it would be nice to get another weed smoking American, you know, just letting them know with the jiu-jitsu in the top of the division. But it's not an easy fight, right? Kopylov has earned his stripes to be here, you know, in a big opportunity. So fun fight, good scrap at middleweight, and we'll find out a lot of answers on Saturday night. Next up, my man, who else but Rich to start us off for the mush of the week?
Yeah, so Henry versus Merab. Obviously, I like Henry in this one. I honestly can't believe people are playing Merab at like minus 200, even minus 170 earlier in the week. I just think it's an unplayable number for him, man, in a fight that's going to be close. And for the people who don't think it's going to be close, I just think they're crazy, man. I've heard a lot of wild stuff. Did you know, Liam, by the way, Merab attempted 50 takedowns against Yan? Big fucking whoop, man. Who cares? You know, that was Yan. I think Yan was a bit defeated after his, you know, previous losses. I think that fight was kind of tailor-made for Merab. Yan kind of needs to reset before he goes, and he just didn't have a chance to reset because Merab's in your fucking face, going for the takedowns, spamming fucking strikes like a spaz. So, yeah, it was a good match for Merab. Well done on that one. But Henry's a different animal. People are telling me that he's old, 37, hasn't got it anymore. And I don't know why the hell no credence is being given for a guy who had like 3 years off, comes back at like 36, 37, whatever he was when he fought Sterling, and goes to a split decision. I thought that was an amazing performance, man. Win or lose. You know, he easily could have got the nod for that. If it had been a 3-round fight, he would have won, man. If you go check the scorecards. I think, like I mentioned last week with Pauga versus Guskov, this is Dana sending in his hitman to fucking rid us of Merab and his boring fucking shit, man. Because Merab might be a nice guy, might be a cool guy to have a beer with, man, but he's fucking dull, in my opinion, and he doesn't move the needle or anything. He's trying to be more colorful now, making these stupid videos. Obviously, he did that one with Captain when he thought Henry did cut him. But I ain't buying it, man. I'm not a Merab fan. In terms of the fight, I think Henry definitely has still got it. I made a prediction. Everyone go check out my Twitter. All I've been posting is Henry's going to do this, Henry's going to do that. But one of the things I said was Henry's going to get this win against Merab. He's going to go up and he's going to face Sean O'Malley in July, as soon as Sean O'Malley's beat Vera by decision. Then you can fade Henry because Sean O'Malley will knock him out. Then Henry will retire. So that's my prediction. That's how I think it's all going to go down. I'm even thinking about adding to Henry now. You know, early in the week, people were moaning, oh, he's drinking, he's smoking, he fired his coach. These are all concerning things. Turned out he didn't fire his coach. Turns out if you go on Embedded episode 2, Merab's there drinking as well. So, you know, no one's bringing that up conveniently. And also, he's mush of the week, man. And for those who are new to mush of the week, the way it goes is it's not just the person everyone's on. There are other factors as well. Half. I reckon about 80%, 90% of MMA Twitter is on Merab. The 4 horsemen are on it. You know, the 4 people I like to fade, people with negative ROIs. I'm not going to mention their names, but they're notoriously shit. They're notoriously losing each week, and they've all bet Merab. So I'm highly confident, man. Do I need to go on?
No, I think you've said a lot, and I think you've laid out a very good case. Let me defend Merab while also agreeing that I think that the money line side is Henry Cejudo in this fight. I think that Merab is starting to get there with the fan base, right? I think he's crossing over a little bit with the social media, and like people are starting to like Merab, but there's one thing between liking you and wanting you to have great opportunities, right? And he did come off that win over Piotr Jan last year. It was a great win. I bet him in that spot, if you remember. And I was not extremely bullish, but I was like, how is he plus 200 in this spot? Where I just thought there was no way that Jan could out wrestle him. Like that was my whole theory of the case. I was like, maybe he just can't wrestle Jan, and then he gets outstruck the whole night. But I was like, there's just no chance that Jan's going to out wrestle him, and Merab can do it all day. So that was for me the predicate of the bet. And I don't know that Merab can out wrestle Henry Cejudo, right? That seems like a big ask for me personally. I said the exact same thing about Aljo, and that was why I didn't get to Aljo in that spot. My biggest betting regret of last year, and there was a few of them, obviously, right? There's going to be regrets every year. But one of my biggest regrets is that I ended up betting on Henry Cejudo minus 110 against Aljo after I had said, this is a pick'em fight. This should be a pick'em fight. And then it ended up playing out like a pick'em fight. I bet it as a pick'em price. I got no value on it. And I had known from the jump that it was a really close fight. And I think that Aljo is bigger than Merab. Right. I think Aljo's a bigger guy physically. He's strong. He's moving up to 145. We've seen that. And Aljo is very, very good on the ground. Right. I've talked about for a long time, his submission ability is unorthodox. His limb length helps him, trap people. He also comes from a really long wrestling background. Right. New York wrestler, wrestled D3 in college at Cortland. This guy knows how to hold on to people, ride from a wrestling perspective, and then also finish with jiu-jitsu. That's really important. So I think that combination of skills is really good for the modern MMA meta, because what does he do? If he can't finish you, he body triangles you for the full 5 rounds. That's what he does. He body triangle you and mitigate time. Is Merab a big body triangle guy? No, he's not going to cook minutes off the clock like Aljo does. So those are, for me, a few of the problems that I think he could run into here, which is, number one, it's not a long fight. So if Merab had 25 minutes to state his case, I think this would be a lot harder of a fight for Henry. It's not to say he couldn't win it, but it's to say Merab just never stops. He would just continue to get in your face and keep doing it unless you kill him. So over 15 minutes, I think that's a better predicate for fighting Merab. Once it's a 25 minute spot, that was the other thing about Jan. I'm like, man, Jan takes some time to get going. You don't want to take time to get going against Merab because it's too late. Then he's going all day. So for me, I'm like, Henry normally starts hot, and he didn't against Aljo. He did okay, but he normally starts out the gate, trying to pressure people. And we saw against Moraes, he got punished a little bit for that aggression, right? Moraes is good. So did Merab. So at every turn, I just look and I say, these guys seem very comparable. They have a lot in common. You look at the stats, they're very similar. The difference is Merab does a little more. He attempts more things. He tries more takedowns. He throws more strikes. And I think that's the simple handicap for this fight. For a lot of people, is he's going to attempt more things. But is he going to succeed at more things in this fight? That, for me, is the question. Because I think Henry is an awkward striker. He's keeping this long, weird distance. Khabib and everybody makes fun of him for it online. But he's gotten to be a pretty good striker, as Dominic Cruz, right? He was able to catch him off beat and hurt him really bad, wobble his equilibrium. He's an older guy in the division, no problem. But Marlon Moraes was at the peak of his powers when he fought Henry Cejudo. He was not when he fought Merab. He was a little bit further down the descent into madness there. But if you look, I truly believe that Henry broke him forever. And the reason being is because when you think you have somebody beat, it's always the fight that is harder than you expect. That's what Chael says. And you look at what happened in that fight. I mean, Marlon's thinking I am clearly the best guy in the world by a mile. and he was better than Henry. This is the problem with fighting that people miss sometimes. The better guy doesn't always win. Sometimes it's the psycho who just really, really wants it bad. And Henry is a psychotic competitor. That's always been why I like betting on the guy. That's always been why I like supporting him. The guy is the consummate competitor every time. He was not the best guy when he won the Olympics, guys. I hate to tell you. He wasn't the best guy when he made the team, right? He wasn't the best guy when he made the team because he's a competitor through and through. And so when you say to me, you're getting one of the most consummate competitors in UFC history at plus 190 in a fight that's only going to be 15 minutes, that sounds like an interesting proposition. So I think Henry's got to be the side here at plus 185 and better, less than 35% chance on a 2-weight world champion, an Olympic gold medalist. I think Merab is a great fighter. I think he pushes a great pace. I think he's hard for most guys in the division to deal with. But I also believe that this is one of the hardest guys in the division for him to beat, because it's hard for him to out-wrestle somebody like Henry, in my view. And while he could win the striking, that's not a guarantee for me. So, holy smokes, Rich. I think you've talked me into it.
Yeah, some other things, as you were saying, that I thought about, man. The Sterling fight was his tune-up fight, man. He probably should have had one before that, but yet he still went to a split decision with Sterling. So he's had that fight now. Got the ring rust out of the way, so that bodes well for him. Another thing that I saw as well, Merab's with John Wood and Syndicate, man. I've talked about this before. That's probably the worst gym, in my opinion. I don't like John Wood. I don't think he's a good coach. I don't like JoJo or Ramona Pascal or any of the other fucking girls. Whenever I was taping Pascal back in the day, or JoJo, you'd look on their Instagram and they'd all be having fucking slumber parties and partying together and, having these big blowouts, getting pissed together. It's like one big fucking house party over there. So I don't like that from Merab. I don't like John Wood in his corner. I don't think he's good at being technical, making adaptations in the fight. And you just said it yourself. Look at that Morales fight for Henry. He don't need no coach in his corner. He could do that himself, man. That was an amazing performance. Got fucked up in round one, the calf kicks and whatnot, and then come out and did what he did. I had other stuff as well, man, but my mind's gone. Just thinking too much.
No sweat. I think that some people are pointing out the Henry decision props. I think that, Henry is most likely to win this fight by decision. This fight is heavily chalked to go the distance. That's the other thing that made me more interested in the Cejudo side, is that they're so heavily expecting this fight to go the distance, right? They are chalking this out heavily to go the distance. So if it's going to be a close competitive fight that goes to decision, I want the plus 190 more often than not. That being said, when you're looking, I think you can get Henry by decision over 3-1, split decision, I think as high as 10-1 in some places. So that I think is some ways to potentially look at it. I think both guys are live to win by knockout, if I have to be truthful, just because Merab, he's always been kind of sneaky with the knockouts throughout his career. Like, I don't think most people expected him to knock out Moraes the way that he did, right? The comeback knockout. I know that Moraes' chin was starting to go, but even then people were still picking Merab decision. He decisions everybody. And then he kills them. Yeah, go ahead.
That was attrition, though, that fight was. The fact that he finished Morales. It wasn't anything to do with his power or technique.
For sure. But what I was going to say is then you have the example of how did he get signed to the UFC? I posted this video as well. He's spinning back-fisted Rafion Stotts in like 10 seconds. So Merab takes a lot of risks, which leads to offensive success, and it also leads to offensive openings for your opponent. We've seen Merab get hurt rock before as well. So I just think both these guys have some power. There might be a little vitriol for this one. And if the wrestling cancels out, you got two guys with some power probably standing in front of each other with not the best defense that are going to throw a lot of strikes. Does seem to me like a recipe for somebody to potentially get hurt. So
just two last things, man. The Aldo fight. Aldo was flat in that fight. He didn't show up, man. Barely did anything. He was super frustrating. I had a small bet on him by KO because obviously Aldo, notorious takedown defense.
Thought he retired that night, correct?
Yeah. I thought he could get his shots off like he did against Moicano, the Aldo of old. I really thought he was going to put it on him. But Aldo didn't show up, man. So I don't even rate that win from Merab. It was more Aldo not showing up than what he did. He's a spaz on the feet, man. If the chat wants my opinion, I haven't put this out to anybody and I can't tip it to members because, it's too volatile. But I've sprinkled round 1 and 2 KO for Henry. They're 1,700 and something like 20 to 1, man, for round 2. I really think the KO is live. On the feet, I just think Merab, he's not technical with it, man. He's just literally like a little energizer bunny, man. He just doesn't stop. He doesn't even know what he's doing. It's just like, let's just go, no matter what it is. So, yeah, I think he could get caught. But Henry's got the better boxing, man, in my opinion. So that would be my way to go.
Yeah, I think that Merab, he's the guy that it's not all about the technical efficiency. It's about the overwhelming nature of the offense. And I think that's his path. But yeah, I think you're making a lot of valid points. And I do think Henry's always been pretty sharp on the counter, right? We've seen a lot of examples of that throughout his career. So reflexes, timing can go as you get older, but does he have one more left in him? He's all in on this fight, he says. So let's find out. I want to just address Ilkat says, what's Erin Blanchfield's gym? She's listed out of MK Muay Thai on Tapology, but I believe she also trains under Silver Fox BJJ, Kravil Pravik in New Jersey. So I'd have to look a little deeper, but just wanted to address that. Thank you for the question from the chat. Without further ado, my man, let's move to this featured bout of the evening where we've got Jeff Hands of Steel Neal taking on Ian Machado Gary, the future. And this is a matchup where a lot of people are starting to hate Ian Gary, right? He had a little bit of incidents talking schmack, talking a little trash, right? Going out there, wearing the mugshot t-shirt and these kind of things, trying to stir the pot, right? Trying to be controversial because controversy creates cash. And when I think that I'm looking at a fight here where I say, Jeff Neal, he's not a guy that I think of as like a huge business interest for the UFC. And I don't mean any disrespect by that, but like the guy, is in fights where he's typically the B-side. When he was main eventing, he was the B-side to Wonder Boy, who was an older fighter even at the time. And I picked Wonder Boy in that spot, right? Suzanne was giving me the elbows, right? The cheeky elbows here. Wow, Liam picking the older fighter. I do from time to time pick the older fighter. I don't only pick younger fighters. I don't blind pick based on age, but I do think youth is an advantage in fighting, right? It's a young man's game. I believe that. But when I'm looking at this fight, I don't think that age is the primary component, though there is a significant age advantage here for Ian Gary, right? 26 years of age compared to 33 for Jeff Neal. And Jeff Neal comes out of a good gym, Fortis MMA, Safe Sayud, a guy who's experienced, cornered, coached a lot of good fighters. However, he's constantly having to yell at his fighters. He's constantly having to give them coaching and direction, what to do, telling them where to move and all this stuff. Ian Gary, I don't think needs to be coached like that. I think he's a lot more, free in his movement, right? I don't think he's as rigid. I don't think he's as, static. And I don't think that he needs to be programmed in that same way. I think he's a lot more loose and flowing when he fights. And I think that could be to his benefit in this matchup. I think that the other dynamic of this fight is that he's been training with Damian Maia. He's been training with Charles Oliveira. He's been training at Shootbox Diego Lima. And I believe that eventually the grappling that I've seen is going to come to fruition in the UFC. I've seen it in Cage Warriors. I've seen it in, footage from outside the UFC. And so I'm just saying to myself, man, eventually this guy will grapple somebody and have success in the UFC and cash this sub prop. But is it going to be here? I don't know, because Jeff Neal is not a quitter, right? Against Shavkat got him. He just caught him. He could not get out. And Shavkat had him like half elevated off the ground, man. When you are tall like that and strong and you can create leverage, it's a disaster, right? And he was bleeding from his face. So he tried to like peel, I think, the hands, if my memory serves, but there was nothing he was going to do. It was over. So he had to concede, right? There's nothing wrong with that. You have a brutal fight like that with one of the, heaviest handed guys in the division, scary guy like Shavkat. I'm not going to take anything away from you, but I've also seen the Wonder Boy fight, which I think could we see Ian Gary replicate Wonder Boy's strategy of hit him, move, hit him, move, hit him, move. Yeah, absolutely. He's got length. He's got speed. He's got footwork. So we've seen Song Kanan clip him on the counter. It's not like he's a invincible fighter, but I do think he's the money side. I think that he's the side that the UFC would prefer to see advance. And I think that he is a dangerous striker in his own right. I think he's the better grappler of the two. So for me, I like Ian Gary to get the win here, but I'm also biased as shit. I'm Irish, okay? I'm fucking Irish, all right? And I like Ian Gary. I like the authentic Ian Gary we're seeing this week. So let's get back on track, Ian, and get a positive vibration with a nice win on Saturday. How about you, Rich?
We're going to have to clip you this week, man. Your Irish impression, everyone's on crack or whatever it was earlier. Yeah, just touching what you were saying about age, man. Obviously, that's a bigger conversation than the show, man. But people need to fucking realize, man, that betting the younger fighter over the older one doesn't play out. And we've got many examples, man. Fucking Dalby, 38, Bonfim, 26, Magny, almost pushing 40, Mike Malott, 25. We've seen it loads recently. So being young, man, there's something to be said for experience on these older fighters. So I think people should incorporate that when they're betting, man. But yeah, in terms of this fight, Ian Gary's going to finish him. He's going to fuck him up. I think that's a nice number, plus 200. If you look at Neil, if you stand in front of him like a Mike Perry, Luque, and you want to bang and, see who's got the bigger balls, you're going to face some trouble. But if you're like Wonder Boy, if you're like, Magny, mixing it up, keeping your range, distance, everything that Gary does well, then you're probably going to beat him, man. He's a bit plodding with his movement. Shavkat didn't really respect the power. He didn't have much head movement. But, Gary's a technical striker, man. I think he knows what to do here. I think it's probably his easiest matchup yet, just the way that Neil moves. He's had health problems. He was on about sepsis or something he had, which is no joke.
Life-threatening. He was hospitalized.
Life-threatening, yeah. I had a thing with one of my family members with it. You get it, 3 days later, man, you're fucking dead. Infection of the blood. So, yeah, it's no joke, man. So, yeah, I like Gary in this one. I think Neil's all right for a round, when he's fresh. But come round 2, specifically, I think that's when the finish comes. So I like Gary round 2 finish, man.
There you have it. I've been sprinkling Gary round 2, round 3 submission props his last couple of fights and not having it work out for me. But eventually it's going to happen. And I'm of course not going to have money on it because it'll have burnt me so many times by the time I get there. But in any case, man, fun scrap. I've done well when I've bet on Ian Gary's money lines. But I have not done well when I've tried to get cute with the props. So probably just going to sit this one out. I feel you. Yeah. I feel you. I've done that before, I think, with Gary, and then it was the Magny fight. So this son of a bitch. Dude, and the reason that was so gutting is because Magny offers no threat, and he was super risk averse. So I don't want to get caught up on the ITD here and then have him just be like, I do not want to get knocked out by this guy and run away from him all night, which I do think is a possibility. But I think in that case, he could still win the fight doing that. So should be a good scrap, though. Next up, my man, we got the co-main event of the evening. And if you guys were here for my first look, I'm about to have to do a little about face, right? I did a short breakdown for the co-main event. I just looked at him like, man, is Paulo Costa a fighter anymore? This guy doesn't even fight. Like, he doesn't show up. He doesn't take it serious. He's arguing with the company. I thought he was trying to get released or something. And then he shows up this week, and he looks like he's $1 million, right, worth of preparation. And he had actually dealt with what looked like a pretty serious injury. Like he looked like he had a hole in his arm at one point. If anybody saw that, it was disgusting. But the guy has now gotten back. I'll send that to you at some point, Rich. But in any case, I believe that's why he had to pull out of his last fight. Now he looks, and I was expecting him to look like shit. Coming into this fight, maybe to pull a stunt, miss weight, something like that. Because he has done that before, and he kind of showed up looking really good. So I'm like, damn, how serious has he been taking this? Where's he been training at? I need to investigate more because I just thought they were trying to do Rob a favor. Like, hey, man, tough fight last time out, right? Du-Plessis, dangerous guy, but he's a champion. He's been around for a long time. He's done a lot of great big fights for them. So I thought they were like, hey, you know what, Rob, we'll get you another winnable fight, an opponent that you want. But honestly, the more I look at it, I'm like, Paul is a pretty big guy, and people are burying him. Because number one, he hasn't been active. I was burying him. I was ready to be like, this guy doesn't fight anymore. He's not a real fighter. And then on top of that, I'm like, his last fight against Luke Rockhold was an embarrassment. But if you look, every single person expected him to finish that fight. And a lot of it took place in the grappling portions where he out-grappled Luke Rockhold for long portions. And I know Luke was gassed out there, but Luke Rockhold's a black belt. He's one of the better grapplers in the history of the middleweight division. People that haven't been watching a long time will forget that, but that's a fact. So I think that Luke is skilled, And even though he's old, he can still grapple. Grappling is something you don't lose as you get older, right? It's your chin. It's the durability. It's those things that go. And he was just, doing a good job being too physical for him. How did Dricus-Du-Plessis out-grapple Robert Whittaker? Was it some great sophistication? I think Du-Plessis is underrated on the ground, right? I think his ground game, people don't talk about it enough. But no, it came from a level of just being a brute. He said, get down to the ground. Whittaker tried to clinch him. He was like, hey, get over here. And Du-Plessis said, give me that. And just stepped behind him on a headlock like it was high school. It slammed him. And Whittaker couldn't get back up. And by the way, I think that fight was over in round 1. Like, it came back out for the second round. How many times now have we seen Whittaker like basically finished in the first round and then come back out for round 2 and it's a mere formality, right? Where he was getting beat up at the end of that first round. I thought he like stumbled back to his corner. He's bleeding everywhere because of the ground and pound from Du-Plessis. And now he's expected to get back in there with another heavy-handed guy, with another guy who's a big, brute, marauder type of guy. And I know what you're going to say, which is that he's not really that scary and knockout threat. And I think that's fair. But when we look back, like Marvin Vettori, he's got a brick for a head, right? We've basically seen that a number of times. A bunch of guys have just had target practice on him. The guy doesn't go down. It's impressive. But that was another fight where Paulo landed some shots that probably would have felled other men, like head kicks and stuff like that. And he just ate them. He just took them and kept coming forward. And I do think that, Paulo, he's at a point in his career where he could still make a run. Like, he's still a young enough guy. He's handsome. He's marketable. Brazilian dude. Was a former weightlifter, right? So like, he's not a guy that was like, he was steeped in martial arts culture his whole life. No, he basically got to an Israel Adesanya fight on the strength of being like handsome and big and strong and punching people in the face and coming forward. That was it. So now could he have actually put together some more skills in this time off and gotten better and show a better product here against the guy whose durability has been waning over time? I think that is possible. So I think the more skilled guy, based on what we know, is obviously Robert Whittaker. Right. But I think that was true against Du-Plessis, and I bet Du-Plessis in that spot, right? If this continues to run in the favor of Rob, if it continues to blow out in terms of the favorite status, then I'll probably have to take a small shot on Paulo here. And I bet Izzy against Paulo, right? I like minus 160 or something. I was like, are you guys insane? Like, this guy has not been fighting for 10 years, and like, he's going to now beat Adesanya. But this is now a spot where I'm like, now everybody's all out on Paulo Costa. And like, if you had just said 3 or 4 years ago, Paulo Costa, Robert Whittaker, I feel like that could have went off as a pick 'em fight. And now, because of circumstances, because one guy has fought for the title and whatever, he's probably on the back 9 in terms of he's on his second UFC weight class, right? He's a former 170. He's at 185 now. He's a pretty big guy now, but he's also like coaching. He's doing these other things. He's wrestling for the Oceanics. Is he really about it right now? I guess we're going to find out. But for me, I think either this fight's not ending inside I think this fight's not going the distance, or Paulo Costa is getting the win by hook or by crook, because everybody that I'm seeing is on Robert Whittaker decision here. So that's the way I'm seeing this. How about you, Rich?
Yeah, I'm the opposite, man. I think Rob gets it done. Don't know how, maybe a late KO. But yeah, he did come in shape, but I try not to bet physiques, man. I've been there before. I go on the skills. Izzy knocked him out, man. Izzy didn't really knock anyone out, and he got him out there in 2 rounds. He got discouraged after a round with a few leg kicks, man. I think Rob's too technical. I think that's going to be a problem for Costa. And yeah, I actually like Rob by KO late, round 2, round 3 maybe. I liked his interview. I obviously didn't like his last fight against Plessis. Obviously, that was a big shock. I didn't bet on it. And I didn't bet on Plessis either. Shame I missed the boat, but whatever. But yeah, you're right. I don't think he's dangerous, Costa. Yeah, he's scary looking, but if you look at his fights, when he fights people who are decent, he doesn't really do well. So yeah, nothing too in depth. Don't know whether I'm going to bet this fight. Don't know whether I'm going to take these KOs. I got a lot of action elsewhere, but if you're asking me how I think it goes down, I'm picking Rob to win. And yeah, maybe a KO in round 2 or 3, man. That'd be my bet.
Yeah, I think one thing that's like jumped out to me, and it might not be relevant, right? Because this is old data points for both guys. But around a similar point in their careers, they both fought Yoel Romero. And Yoel Romero is a beast. Physically, he's a machine. And honestly, man, I think that he got robbed against Robert Whittaker. I thought he beat Rob. They had 2 very close fights. I thought you could make an argument for Yoel in both of those fights, right? Like it was really close fights. It's similar dynamic with Costa, but I kind of thought like Costa had won the fight. Even though it was close, I was like, Costa probably got him there. And it was close. But they gave it to Costa. I'm like, okay. At the time, like Costa just was taking the shots way better from Yoel Romero. And like since then, things have gotten worse for Rob. Like you were saying, Izzy doesn't knock people out. I agree. Except fucking Rob, who he put in a body bag like 4 times in the 2 fights that they had. And Rob is just so damn tough. Like I said, he got knocked out in the first round. He's like, give it to me again, tube sock. And then he got hit again and knocked out in round 2 in that fight. But then they come back out for the rematch. And I thought you could even make an argument Rob won the decision despite getting knocked out in the rematch. So it's like, he basically went down, flash KO, and then he's like, let me wake back up and win a decision here. But I just feel like Rob is another guy, consummate competitor, skilled in all positions. He's going to give you his heart. But at minus 250, he's got to give you everything. He's got to fight a perfect fight. He's got to do everything right against a guy who's just like a big ball of muscle who could make you pay for making a mistake, I feel. So yeah, it just seems like a fun fight. Yeah, go ahead.
I do think Rob's kind of unplayable at this number coming off the KO loss. You're right. You know, we do have to question his durability. So I don't
drop by Till, drop by a bunch of, so he's always relied on like being tough as shit at middleweight because these guys are hitting him with shots that hurt him. So great fight though, man. Great fight. And I'm looking forward to it. You know, I can't say the last time I was really looking forward to a Paulo Costa fight. So let's go. Let's see what happens. Something crazy and violent, I hope. But man, the creme de la creme, the piece de resistance, the main event of the evening. That's where we're at, folks. I want to say quickly, please go ahead and drop a like on the video if you're enjoying. We have had a blast bringing the content to you, but it always means the world if you could just show that little bit of love, little bit of support for the free content. We really appreciate it. Without further ado, my man, let's break down this main event. I'll kick it over to you first. How do you feel about the featherweight title fight between Ilia, Topuria, and Alexander the Great Volkanovski, Rich?
Yeah, I forgot to mention it on the last breakdown, man. That's one thing I like about this show is we've always got receipts, man. People can clip shit. So when Gary wins by, ITD, I want people to come back and apologize next week. Because there's a lot of people in the comments think it's going to be a decision or he ain't got no chance. And I don't think they could be more wrong. So, yeah, Topuria, man. That's the short of it. Taking Topuria. Volk, the age, coming back after the KO loss relatively soon. The mental health issues, I'm not hating on that, but it is what it is. He seems to be in his head, in his feelings, man. The weight cuts as well, multiple weight cuts. The drinking that he was talking about leading up to the Islam fight. Just there's a lot of outside stuff I don't like to hear. Topuria, I haven't been a believer, man. Full disclosure, I haven't. I've even tried to fade him at times, but now I'm switching camps. I think he gets it done. Changing of the guard type shit. He's solid everywhere, man. I like his boxing. Obviously, he's got the jiu-jitsu, good cardio. He's just shown us he can go 5 rounds, which is quite important, actually. I like to see that. That was something I was going to mention about Woodburn. Before he got the Bo Nickel fight, he went to decision twice. I like to see that on the regionals, and I like to see it just in general, man, that people can go the 3 rounds. So, yeah, I'm taking him. This is a fight I'm looking forward to. I couldn't give a fuck about Costa, but this is one I care about. And, yeah, it's going to be a great one, man. But, yeah, in the short of it, I'm taking Topuria, man, for those intangible reasons about Volk. It's mostly a Volk fade based on those things, man. I think they are very similar in styles. Obviously, there's little tweaks to their game that are different. But, yeah, I like Topuria, man.
I absolutely love it. Rich, as you know, I also like Ilia Topuria, man. I will disclose to my audience, guys, I bet Ilia Topuria when he was plus 156, plus 148, plus 144. So early on in the process, I bet him. And I just thought to myself, like, number one, I predicted how this line was going to move. I was like, there's no way that this is going to close with him above plus 125. I still feel that way. I believe that we will see Ilia close anywhere from, plus 120 to minus 120. That's kind of the way that I see this market closing. Now, the market can be right or wrong, but I just thought, okay, I'm not a guy that bets early very often. I like to bet underdogs more often than not. So typically when you're betting underdogs, the best price is going to be later on in the process, right? People are going to parlay. But when you talk about main events, it can move a lot different. And I think there is a lot of money coming in on the Volkanovski side. But I think it's being tempered by sharp money as well that's coming in on the Topuria side. I think there's sharps on both sides of this fight, no doubt about that. But when I look at it on paper, I say to myself this. You've got a young man who is a very marketable figure in my view. He represents multiple demographics. He's Georgian. He is from Spain. He is from Germany. So he's born in Germany, lives in Spain, he represents the Georgian people. My man speaks a bunch of languages. A very marketable guy for all these reasons, right? He's also a handsome guy, right? And people don't talk about these things. I'll talk about them. I don't care. If you're a good looking person, they'll put you on a poster. Right? If you're not very handsome, harder to market you, harder to put you on posters, have people look at your face, right? That's a simple reality of the business. And I think that when you're looking at a guy like Ilia, he's young, he's brash, he talks a lot of shit, and he goes out there and he fights hard to back it up. Is that not what the UFC asked for from their athletes? They're like, please go out there and market yourself. Please go out there and make our job easier. Call for fights, say, market yourself, say you're the best. Do whatever it takes to get people to pay attention to you and build up these fights, please. And I think that that's what he's going out there and doing, right? And I think that he represents a lot of those values that they look for in a potential champion. Now, let's talk about the skills. Alexander Volkanovski is one of the best fighters that there ever has been in the UFC. That's a fact. I've always talked about Volk's one of my favorite fighters. Volk's one of the best pound-for-pound athletes out there. All true. Every dog has their day, right? When you look at what Volkanovski has accomplished, he made a huge mistake in his last fight. He decided, I'm going to take on this guy who I already lost to. It's a legacy fight. It's a big fight. I'm going to take it on short notice. Afterwards, he realized the gravity of the mistake. He's like, I just got lost. I lost. I'm embarrassed, right? I shouldn't have taken it. I was drinking. And he says why. I felt pressured into doing this. I needed a camp. He was having all these mental problems, money problems, and frankly, he just sounded like a guy who was like stir crazy. He needed to get out of his own house. He needed to have like focus to his life again. But that is almost like a point of desperation, right? As opposed to, I remember the speeches, man. I have it all in my notes. I have 20 plus pages of notes on Volkanovski, and I have all the speeches he gave where he said, I just beat, this great champion, and it's not going to be the last champion I beat. I'm going to beat another. He's like, but he just lost to a great. He's only lost to the greats. He's lost to another great, Alexander the Great. Was he like, if I win, oh shucks? No, he was the same guy that Ilia Topuria is now, in my view. He was brash. He was confident. I'm Max Holloway's worst nightmare. That's what he said. Was he like, hey, I'm Max Holloway's best friend? No, he didn't do that. He said, I want a piece of you. I want to fight you. I want to take your belt. I'm better than you. That's what every guy, for the most part, that actually comes and takes the strap feels. They don't come in like, maybe I win, maybe I don't. Oh, shucks about it. Like, these guys have to be confident. You do not want to come into a fight unsure if you're going to win. I hate to tell you. You want to come in goddamn sure you're going to win, because otherwise you might quit, because otherwise you might at some point when it gets hard find a way out of it. Whereas if you tell yourself there's no way I lose this fight, then you will eventually say, oh, well, this must be the part I win. Oh, it's been going bad so far, but this must be the part I win. That's how you have to talk to yourself. And when I look at a guy like Ilia Topuria, I don't think losing this fight registers in his mind. I don't think he's processing that as a possibility. So if he gets humbled by that harsh reality, I'll be right there with him. But he is going in there with the utmost confidence and belief. I could just tell you guys, how can Volkanovski have the same utmost confidence and belief when he just lost a fight? He just lost a fight. Like, we're talking about guys that are supposed to go in there and convince themselves, I'm invincible. I cannot lose a fight. One guy has the evidence that he's never lost a fight. The other guy has the evidence that most recently, the last fight he was in, he lost a fight. Is that good or bad for your confidence building? In my opinion, it's not good. When you talk about the fact that everybody else is saying, what about the curse? What about this? It's not stopping them from betting him, by the way. It's not stopping them from, supporting him and getting to the window. They're saying, the curse and whatever, he's doing the gimmicky things. Is he too old? It's not about whether he's too old, in my view. It's about whether or not this guy is the real deal. And I think Ilia Topuria is the real deal. Is he a black belt on the ground or not? Yes, he is. Is he good at wrestling or not? Yeah, yes, he is. Y'all seen his wrestling inside the octagon? It's disgusting. He's throwing people ass over tea kettle. He's picking people up on the double leg. It looks perfect. Josh Emmett, not an easy guy to take down, sitting him down to his ass right away. I think that when you look at those things, I say, man, what phase can he not compete in? Where is this massive advantage for Volkanovski, except that he's beaten great guys and he's been around a long time? Those are the two things that are true. He's got great skill. He's got good low kicks. Okay. If I acknowledge all those things, I then say, where is his massive edge? Is he bigger? No. Is he younger? No. Is he faster? No. Is he going to hit harder? I don't believe so. Is he the better submission threat? I don't believe so. Is his cardio head and shoulders above? I don't think we have evidence that suggests that.
Do you know what?
So where is the big advantage? That's all I'm asking.
Do you know what I think it is with Volkanovski now? What I see from him, man, and I might be wrong. I think it's resentment. I think he knows that his like time's coming. You know, he made that funny video about being old because everyone was chirping at him. That's whatever. But I think deep down, he knows it's coming to an end. I think that's why he's doing these cash grabs. He's talking about UFC 300. He obviously wants a big fight on that card. And fair play to him, man. Get as much money as you can out of this game before it comes to an end. But I think it's resentment. I think he looks at Topuria, sees, you know, a similar type of guy that he once was. And yeah, it's just that. It's like, you know, these fighters who retire because their body just hasn't got it anymore, but their mind still wants to fight. I think that's where Volkanovski's at, man. He wants to keep fighting, but I don't know. I just see him getting dropped multiple times in different fights now. And you do that against someone like Topuria, man, he's going to jump on you and snatch your neck, man. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that, man. That's what I'm seeing from Volk.
Fair play. And so I did a pretty long breakdown on this main event where I did make my pick as well and talked about why I like Topuria to win the fight. Listen, would I make Topuria a minus 175 favorite? No. I think that would be a little bit unfair to Volkanovski, right? He is a clear champion. He's a defined great fighter. All these things are true. But I would make it minus 115, minus 120, Ilia Topuria. I think he should be favored slightly to win the fight. It would not be the first time that a champion closed an underdog. And I just believe it's because you have one guy who's ready to take the belt. I believe he is ready, whether it was Alex or somebody else. I think he would be ready to take the belt off anybody holding it tomorrow. So that's the way that I feel about it, man. I think it's a great fight. And I think that, hey, it's a fight. It could go either way. But I truly believe it is going to be a KO1, Ilia Topuria. I think he will leave no doubt. So that's the end of it for me, Rich. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, just to add on that, man, I think the line's obviously dictated because this is Topuria's toughest fight to date, and this will let us know where he's at. You know, obviously we've got our takes on Topuria and we're putting our faith in him, but if Volk won it, fair enough, man. I'll hold my hands up and apologize and say I was wrong, but I think that's what's driving the line, man. But yeah, if you want my bets, I've got a fucking Patreon. It's $3 a week. Link in my bio on Twitter. We do a Discord as well, which is thriving at the minute. So yeah, there you are, man.
There you have it. And guys, if you're looking for more information from me, you can find it all down in the description box below. Did get in on Topuria months back with a pretty long, extensive write-up for why I thought it was going to go down. So if you're looking for my first looks at the best odds and things like that, go ahead and get involved with the Patreon, but always going to try and come to you guys with our honest opinions, right? And so we'll be right, we'll be wrong, but we'll always be here to take the L's, to celebrate the victories each and every week with you guys. And I hope that you guys have appreciated that as well. So if you enjoyed the content, go ahead and drop a like on the video before you get out of here. Make sure that you get subscribed because we're always coming back to talk about these fights each and every week. God bless you all. Enjoy UFC 298. Until next time, take care and enjoy those fights. See you guys.